in one case recent, and the other brand new book of poems, in having Ellen Bass, who's joining us from Santa Cruz, and Derek Sheffield, who's joining us from the other side of the mountains here, the Cascades. And they are here tonight to read from these books. Ellen's most recent collection, Indigo, was published by Copper Canyon last spring. And we were supposed to have had a live and in-person reading. I think the year of 2020 is already getting weird about time. I think it was in the spring that she was going to do that. I believe she also did some Copper Canyon related virtual readings that were sort of, Copper Canyon being in our neck of the woods, it felt like they were emanating from here. But this wonderful collection of hers, which is one of a series of books of poetry that she's written in recent years that Copper Canyon has been publishing. This newest collection marked beautifully by a sense of everyday mystery, of everyday love, and with which carries that sense as life has been lived of loss, and of deep attachment to the world, and deep and yet fleeting in the way we know life ultimately is fleeting. And it's a book that has a strong sense of grace in the language, and has an almost unassuming air about it. And then you realize she's just laid down something profound, and it really is profound, some of what she does, in much of what she does in this book. Ellen's also, if you came in early in the chat, and I know many of you here have been students of hers, or are students of hers, and that's something we may get to in the chat part, talking a little more about that. I will also say, because we were talking about one of the younger poets, she's championed a poet who you'll hear from in 2021 named Donica Kelly. The Grey Wolf is publishing. It's a second book. But not only is she championing her poetry, but one of the other enduring valuable parts of the work Ellen Bass has done has been in the field of writing about sexual abuse, and her co-authored book, The Courage to Heal, has continued to be a book that serves great purpose and need. And Donica Kelly, acknowledges that book as well as Ellen's work with her as a poet and a teacher. With Ellen tonight, and the way this evening will go, in fact, they'll be going back and forth, so you'll be able to tell which one's which, I think, once we get going. But Derek Sheffield, whom we did an evening such as this a few months ago for an anthology that he's a co-editor of called Dear America, which is a series of various kinds of writings. Derek is the poetry editor of the online journal terrain.org. And he is the author of a newly published collection, his second full collection of poems, which he'll be reading from tonight, entitled Not for Luck, published by Michigan State University Press. It's actually selected there as a publication prize, the Wheelbarrow Book Prize that Mark Doty chose from those various books submitted. Derek's previous book, Through the Second Skin, was also a runner-up for the Emily Dickinson First Book Award. He will read from this book tonight. He also teaches over at Wenatchee Valley College. And they'll go back and forth. And after I get done doing what I'm doing here, I will disappear, and you'll be in their very capable hands. But you're encouraged to put questions in the chat, which I will resurface after these two have gone along, and we'll pose to one or both. And then the evening will move on into the January darkness that we're in. We're getting a few minutes later at more light every day now at the end of the day. This would be a great night in person, but because I can imagine what the feeling, seeing the comments in the chat, and already knowing the rapport that I've been seeing with Ellen and Derek. But I think that will come through, and we will all, from the warmth and shelter and safety, because we need to keep doing that of where we are, we'll get to enjoy this evening. And again, it's what an auspicious way to begin the new year, which we hope takes us to better places than 2020 in good part did. Although Derek may come up, he may remind us of the two good things of 2020, because Ellen's one of them. With that, thank you all again for coming in, all the places you have come in from. Karen, my colleague, is also part of this. She's been putting information about the books Many of you already purchased copies of Not for Luck, and those will be coming to you. We'll get those as soon as that can happen. They're still getting to us with the holidays and all that. So, but they're on their way. So with that, again, thank you all. And now please join in giving a warm attention and welcome to Ellen Bass and Derek Sheffield.
Thank you so much, Rick. I want to begin with a little audience participation here because I just noticed that Kurt Caswell is with us, and Kurt was very close with Barry Lopez, who we just lost days ago. And so Barry and his work has been much on my mind recently. So Kurt, I was going to ask you if I just had the thought, maybe if you could, maybe for by the end of the reading, to post in the Q&A a passage from Barry that you choose for us, that we can read together in his honor. And on that note, I want to thank you all for being here with us tonight. There are lots of other things to do other than be on another Zoom session. I fully realize that. And so I understand what a gift it is to have you with us here. So thank you. About 5 or 6 years ago, I think I was one of the last readings in Elliott Bay Bookstore's old location down in Pioneer Square. I read with Chris Dombrowski, and we were accompanied by Jeffrey Foucault and Billy Conway on the guitar and drums. It was just kind of a dream come true. And Chris gave me the idea for what Ellen and I are doing tonight. He said, hey, Sheffield, let's do a poetry shootout. I'll read a poem, you read a poem. And I was like, okay, I'd never heard of that term before. And so Ellen and I, thank you, Chris, are going to do a poetry shootout tonight. Don't take that metaphor too far, please. And it's kind of exciting. And I like it because it means that I get to listen really deeply to Ellen's poems, which I love so much. And I just want to thank Ellen for agreeing to read with me tonight. It's such a gift that she's giving me. So thank you, Ellen. And so I only know one poem that I'm going to read for sure, because this is the starting poem. So bang, okay. This is, and it's from the book that this, I've only had this in my hands for about a week. It just released on January 1st. So timid as any herd animal, and that's H-E-R-D. That bright of the blue sky variety, raising every racket of mower and blower, backhoe and whacker, not to mention every street's hatch of after-school slammers and high-pitched trampoliners. Oh, just a while longer, a day, maybe 3, give them a rest. Have the hammocks hold fast, and the bark remain in the dog. Have the thinnest veil of dusk, fog or drizzle, call stillness near. Her sister, silence, here.
Oh, thank you, Derek, for starting us off with that beautiful poem. Maybe it's more like a relay than a shootout.
Oh, I like that. I like that better. Take that, Dombrowski.
There's who is it? I have such a bad memory. That talks about the way that George Lakoff and his co-author, I can't remember for the second, talks about the way metaphors shape our thinking. And so I like the relay where you carry
Oh,
it and then I carry it.
there's so much more vitality in that metaphor.
Yeah, and it's not like dead, we don't want to. We don't want to, just on a kind of really basic level,
You know what we're doing here?
Mhm.
I just read Janice Ray's beautiful tribute to William Kittredge on terrain.org today. And what we're doing is what Kittredge did, is we're reinventing the Western mythos.
Yes.
So, I mean,
Yes,
that's
metaphors
what
we
you're
live
doing.
by. You
That's
you
what you're
guys,
doing.
thank you. I'm so glad you all know. Yes, Lakoff and Johnson, isn't it? Yeah. Metaphors we live by. If you don't know their work, it's really fascinating. I learned so much about metaphor reading them.
Is that the one where they talk about how so many of the metaphors, all these metaphors that go back to war and everything?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Oh, good. I thank you for putting that in the chat. So I was thinking when you were reading uh, about silence, of course, and listening, and so Derek and I talked about how we're going to try and read a poem that seems in some way to speak to or respond to or hold hands with that poem. This poem is called Listening. What if geese honking overhead told you what it's like to travel so far? Or a fish described the pierce of the hook, the shock of the line? What if a leaf could whisper the slow ache as the green drained away? Or a tree the sudden axe? What if we could hear the small gnats mourn? And that small gnats mourn is from Keats. I didn't make that up.
Ah, oh, I love that. And this is the scary part because I have no idea. I'm just in the spell of the poem, and I love how Keats comes through bass there. So here's, for whatever reason, this is the one that came to mind. And this is actually, Ellen and I need to thank the Spring Creek Project, because one of the many confluences in our collections between Indigo and Not for Luck is that both poems are populated, or excuse me, both books are populated by poems that came from residencies that we did, courtesy of the Spring Creek Foundation at the H.J. Andrews Experimental Forest near Blue River, Oregon, which again comes back to Barry Lopez. It was like 2 miles from where Barry lived. And so this comes from one of the assignments that you get when the Spring Creekers set you up. We could, and it's got one of those titles that spills right into the poem. We could see, if we mapped this mountain creek's channel over many seasons of spill and flood, gravel and jam, we could play those maps back like the flip pictures we drew in rooms of another age, to let one more hour slip by. And we could see, without a doubt, that jabbed snake writhe before our eyes, and would hear, of course, not a sound in such a scream. While in our cities, bright glasses of iced water, like nothing, kept appearing across tabletops.
Thank you. Being at the Andrews was way, way more amazing and inspiring than I imagined it could be. I was really carried away. I was trying to put off a hip replacement and got one of those shots where they put kind of a gel in your hip so that you can put it off a little bit longer and you think you're doing way better than you are. And I just loved being there so much and loved hiking around there so much that by the time I got home, I had just gotten the gel put in like 2 weeks before, and by the time I was home, it was all out, and the hip replacement was happening. So it was irresistible to be there, and so I will read my poem from being there. This is one of the several places that we were asked to visit and to write from that experience. And it's called Fungus on Fallen Alder at Lookout Creek. Florid, fluted, flowery petal, flounce of a girl's dress, ruffled fan, striped in what seems to my simple eye an excess of extravagance. Intricately ribboned like a secret code, a colorist's vision of DNA. At the outermost edge, a scallop of ivory, then a tweedy russet, then mouse gray, a crescent of celadon velvet, a streak of sleek seal brown, a dark arc of copper, then butter, then celadon again, again butter, again copper, and on into the center, striped thinner and thinner to the green, green moss fairy heart. How can this be necessary? Yet it grows and is making more of itself. Dozens and dozens of tiny starts, stars no bigger than a baby's thumbnail, all of them sucking one young dead tree on a gravel bank that will be washed away in the next flooding winter. But isn't the air here cool and wet and almost unbearably sweet?
Mm. Wow. That brings back the magic of that place. And I think it was there that I realized that Douglas fir was an entirely inadequate name for what I was for who I was among. And I think it was Allison Deming who maybe gave me the term elder being, and that felt so right. These being among these elder beings, 400+ year old trees, lives that we know now communicate with each other. They talk in tree talk. So I guess Ents and Treebeard weren't quite so fanciful a creation. So this is when I was there not long after. We'll stay in the Andrews here. I was there not long after a former Oregon State Poet Laureate, Peter Sears, had died, and I had the great fortune of being friends with Peter. He and I played tennis together. I've been playing a lot of pickleball lately too. Actually, I saw pickleball flash up on the chat screen. Pickleball is a great sport, Ellen. So anyway, Peter, I didn't plan on writing about Peter Sears. I was supposed to write about the elder beings, and but that's the exciting thing about poetry, right? Like something like Jericho Brown says, you know, you're supposed to want stuff like anything you know to be subverted, and that's a crazy thing to want, something like that. And I've got it written down somewhere. It was in your class somewhere, Ellen. Thank you. Okay, here we go. Here it is. At the log decomposition site in the H.J. Andrews Experimental Forest of Visitation. And it has an epigraph from Peter. I might break, I might disappear. Peter Sears, 1937 to 2017. Below thick moss and fungi, and the green leaves and white flowers of wood sorrel, where folds of phloem hold termites and ants busily gnawing through rings of ancient light and rain, this rot is more alive, says the science, than the tree that for 4 centuries it was. Beneath beetle galleries vermiculately leading like lines on a map to who knows where, all kinds of mites, bacteria, protozoa, and nematodes whip, wriggle, and crawl, even as my old pal's bark of a laugh comes back. A recollection, perhaps, of Seattle when he appeared out of a van with Tobias Wolff just as I was passing. Thank you, AWP. Hey everyone, it's Peter Sears, I said to my friends, and ran up as he stood in his long black coat, not saying a word, his smile under the streetlights deepening as Wolff and his mustache politely waited while I gave Peter a pen to sign my arm, my friends wondering what in the world a Peter Sears was. He was the one always breaking others up with deadpan cracks in that New York accent. Yale poet who came west, Hugo student and Stafford friend, writer in the school's low-res prof, Oregon's laureate, and Rivers' father. He's so morose you get depressed just hearing his name, he said once about a poet we both liked. Perhaps it's the rest red hue of his cheeks and the spill of woody bits, or something in the long shags of moss draping every down curved limb. He'd love to be, right now, a green furred Sasquatch, tiptoeing among the boles of these firs alive since the first Hamlet's first soliloquy. He'd love to shout, "Gotcha!" as he grabbed me from behind. He'd be in touch, he said in an email, as soon as the doctors cleared him. Then a sharp ache at the news on a website. When this tree toppled, the science continues, its death went through the soil's mycorrhizae, linking the living and the dead by threads as fine as the hairs appearing those last years along Peter's ears. And those rootlets kept rooting after. That email buried in my inbox, 2 lines and his name in lit pixels on my screen. What if I click reply? That's what he would do. Even out of place and time. Here in the understory's lowering light, where gnats rescribble their whirl after each breath I send. Hey everyone.
I taught with Peter at Pacific U's MFA program for many years, and it's beautiful and moving and accurate to hear your poem about him. I remember many things about him, but I think mainly his kindness. He was just such a kind, thoughtful, warm human. Thank you for sharing that. Well, that makes me think about fruits. Um, this is fun, Derek. I'm really glad you brought this up. Uh, one of the things that I find about the only thing I find stressful about readings is thinking of what to read. And so I didn't have to do that before this because I couldn't prepare in advance. I had to just wait. And I don't know if you said this, that we thought we would read as much as possible eco poems or poems that maybe broadly would be in that category. So I did kind of look through and think about which of those I had, and we might stray from that, but that's like a starter. But other than that, I didn't have to think about what to read, and it's fun to just try and think about it on the spot. So this is called God of Roots. Meanwhile, the heat and light of a flaming star rush 93 million miles to reach us. Baby girls are born with their 400,000 egg cells already formed. Otters keep grooming their guard hair, whirling the water, working air into the deep underfur. Beluga whales swim along the Earth's magnetic field. Chicks pip a circle of holes counterclockwise around the blunt end of their eggs, pressing with their feet and heaving with their shoulders. Larvae eat their way through the soft mesophyll of oak leaves, leaving a trail of dark feces in their wake. Tart juice swells within the rinds of lemons, and under the earth, the god of roots goes on painting the lustrous fringe with a brush so delicate, only one sable hair, as though there were all the time in the world.
Oh, damn. One sable hair. And thank God for baby girls. I believe you had feces in there too. Yeah. Okay. Well, that settles it. By the way, before I go, so on that note, there's a feces cliffhanger right there. Just hold that note. Actually, don't hold that note. Oh geez, feces connection.
You just
Thank you, Patricia.
digging
Thank you.
yourself.
Oh wow. So I really need to thank there's a special woman and a team in Wheelbarrow Books, Anita Skeen, who is a teacher a lot like you, Ellen, that I've come to understand, and Lori Hollinger, Elise Jajuga at Michigan State University Press, Wheelbarrow Books, and of course Mark Doty for because without them, this would still be a file on my hard drive. So let's get back to feces. This is the seconds. Last patches of snow all but gone, and first wildflowers flecking the lawn. I walked out to the shed and pulled open the door with a woody squeak, and there, rising from the dirt floor, surrounded by a dusty clutter of tools, a little mountain, the kind of thing my daughters might have scooped together in the fall and left for the fairies, if it weren't a perfectly conical accretion of turds. What to make of such a thing? Holding the door and beholding it in the spill of the first light. And then I knew the droppings. Here she was, my old dog. That golden shuffle of paling wheat fields who'd retrieved and licked clean how many rocks thrown from this hand? What was left of her here? What creature had carried each dried nub from the yard's far corners to form this strange cairn? There, under the nail-hung weed whacker, my grease rag on the floor pressed flat, a little bed I kneeled to touch. Something had curled there in the gasolined nights, all winter, as snow and more snow made a world of white mounds. I walked around back, searching for a gap, and stopped mid-step. A big, squirrel-like bulk on my scrap wood, the black, unblinking shine of a left eye, tilted toward mine. No glimmer of flight in that orb, no twitch of scurry, only the deepest calm, as if the ages of the earth were taking my measure. I felt like a pane of glass, even as I took all I could of it, its weight and whiskers and wide rounded ears, a long bottle brush tail stretched out over my pile of sawed lengths of lumber and plywood. And later I would look for it in a book among my stacks. That night, after I turned out the lights and my daughters asked for another story, I told them of its midden while I sat on their floor, becoming another dark shape among the heaps of their clothes and stuffed animals. At first, ew, and then only the sounds of breathing as they remembered their old dog. Those restless slopes that passed through their arms, the river sounds she made licking those rocks to death. Let us not let go, ever, is what I took from your cave wall stare, wood rat, who would grab every bloody tooth my girls have tucked under their pillows, pack rat, who would make hill after hill of all the years of their homework, vestigial historian who'd cleave to the locks of do-it-yourself haircuts and clutch every tremor of their changing voices, their first words, every shape and shade of their widening gazes. And all the hard shit too, the nights of no sleep, the wet beds and fits and screams, slammed doors and shaken fists. How long have you been with us? How many iterations of you and them and me? Even as you turned at last toward the woods behind our house and slowly, one careful step at a time, slipped away as if you'd already snatched all the rain-colored seconds from all the clocks that ever were or will be.
Mm. Oh, I really appreciate that poem, Derek. I love that the rat is preserving all of these moments, all of these things. What a turnaround. It's astonishing.
Thank you. Yeah. I've been thinking I need to make more stuff up in my poems because I don't really do that. I mean, that's just like documentary, that's just like a gift of life. I mean, that's kind of what I do. I just kind of wait for the gifts, and kind of grab them. But I'm like, oh, some other people make stuff up. Maybe I got to start making more stuff up. I don't know.
Well, I don't see any indication that you need to do that yet.
I know the poem that you need to read, my friend.
Well,
you know what you need to read.
I do, but I don't think it's related to that poem. And
Okay.
I do have a poem that has feces in it.
You already you started the feces.
Well, I have another one. And so I think I'm gonna, we will get to that one that I know you want me to read, but let's see if we can get there by the trail. And it's just a very small part of this poem, and it's not called feces, it's called shit in this poem, but we know it as the same thing. I'm just making sure I have it here correctly.
Dad, I apologize for Ellen's language.
So this is called Grizzly. She grazes in a meadow, sulfur blossoms spilling from her jaw. At this moment, she seems so calm, she could be holy. If what that means is something like being wholly unaware of the good she gives. How even her rooting tills the soil, and even her shitting ferries the seeds, and even her bathing is a joy to behold, as I am beholding her this morning, as she leans over a water hole, her shadow first, and then her reflection on the skin of the water, then the splash as she enters, the pond opening, rippling, and the scritch as she scrubs her head with her paw, the great planet of her head that she dunks and raises, shaking the water in wide arcs, spraying the lens of the hidden camera. And now she climbs out, water rivering off her fur. She is drying that huge head in the long grasses. And here she hunkers over a bison carcass, slowly ripping free the shoulder, those precision instruments that work with an ease that seems, yes, delicate. Blood stains the river and stains the snowbank and stains the rock. Vessel carrying the chemicals of life, hair and bone, flagella and bloom. She carries them, lumbering forward as she sinks her teeth and feeds.
Mm. Yeah, I see what you mean. I do hope we get to that other poem, but that was a good handoff in this poetry relay. It actually was it a butterfly in there? What was or did I dream that?
You did.
I dreamed it? Okay. Somehow as I was listening to it, an Amy Fleury poem flew in there. Oh gosh, she has this anyway. We'll talk about that later. So yeah. Oh, I know what I was thinking. I think it was Freud who said that we would never forgive ourselves for being born between the urethra and the anus, something like that, about our difficulty with the body, you know? And boy, we just have to get past that. I mean,
You said that, Jarek, because today I started working on a poem, and these things might come out of the poem. I really don't know, but I was looking at it in the poem at the urethra and the vagina and the anus. So that's not a thing that comes up all that often in a poetry reading that someone says that. I feel like we have mind meld.
I just like, I think we're at this, species moment that we have to get past this shit to continue that motif. And, I mean, Hopkins figured it out long ago. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. I mean, what else do you need to know? It's right there. And that's us too. And that's, it may seem paradoxical, um, but that's why poetry, I think, is the truest or best form of expression, because paradox is inherent whenever we talk about these sorts of things. There's some LOL going on here. What's Patricia saying? Come on. What? Oh, getting past the shit. Okay, that's good. All right, I like that. Okay, so this is a.
I like it. This collaboration is spiraling downward. Oh, Patricia, indeed.
Oh, we have.
Okay, we won't stay on this subject forever. I don't know how many more I have that have feces in them anyway.
No, we're going with blood. We're going with blood.
Okay.
Okay, and this poem comes right after this epigram. This is from my first book, Through the Second Skin, that Pisces Press published. Wait, blood? Yeah, no, seriously. So
No, I'm sorry. I was reading a comment from Wendy. This chat threatens to eclipse the reading.
If I were Amy Fleury, I would have read my beautiful butterfly poem that is freezing its wings in this. I think it's an elk carcass, as I recall. It's an incredible poem, Southern Illinois University Press, and but I think it's your shoulders, the shoulders in the bear, right, is the instrument in your poem. But
no, it's claws.
Oh, the claws.
Maybe I need to revise the poem.
I think the lesson here is that I'm a terrible listener.
No, when I was reading it, I thought it's not that easy to hear it. I'll tell it to you again, though. And here she hunkers over a bison carcass, slowly ripping free the shoulder. Those precision instruments that work with an ease.
That's it.
I don't think I stopped long enough on shoulder. And, because I felt when I was reading it that it was hard to absorb at that moment. So there, now we've all got it. It's the claws.
I think we need to have a lengthy discussion at the end of the reading with the audience about how long one should stop on shoulder. Okay. So in the meantime, this is, so I think Dad is here tonight. Hi, Dad. And I'm sorry for our French. Here's a poem called A Good Fish. Jerk that bitch, urges my guide, and I give my shuddering pole a jerk, hooking the throat of the first steelhead of my life. Reel 'em, he mutters, and revs the motor. I horse my pole and reel and horse. The boat's mascot whines, her claws clicking. Let it take some line. My father, uncle, and cousin are reeling. First fish, they shout, and I shout, what a fighter! A silver spine touches the air. There, he points, a hen. And guess what? She's gonna join the club. Somehow spotting in that glimpse the smooth place along her back where a fin had been snipped. He leans over the gunwale, dips a net, and scoops her into the boat. She is thick with a wide band of fiery scales slapping the aluminum bottom. Welcome to the club, he says, and clobbers her once and again and once more before she goes still. A bleeder, he says, shaking his head and handing her to me. I curl a finger through a gill the way you're supposed to, determined not to let her slip and flop back to the river, a blunder I'd never live down. A good fish, I mean, a good fish.
Mm. Mm. Well, this is called Ode to the Fish. Nights when I can't sleep, I listen to the sea lions barking from the rocks off the lighthouse. I look out the black window into the black night and think about fish stirring the oceans. Muscular tuna, their lunge and thrash, churning the water, whipping up a squall, storm of hunger. Herring cruising, river of silver in the sea, wide as a lit city. And all the small breaths, pulse of frilled jellyfish, thrust of squid, frenzy of krill, transparent skin glowing green with the glass shells of diatoms. Billions swarming up the water column each night, gliding down at dawn. They're the greased motor that powers the world, shipping heat to the Arctic, hauling cold to the tropics, currents unspooling around the globe. My room is so still, the bureau lifeless, and on it, inert, the paraphernalia of humans. Keys, coins, shells that once rocked in the tides, opalescent abalone, pearl earrings. Only the clock's sea green numerals register small changes, and shadows the moon casts, fan of maple branches, tick across the room. But beyond the cliffs, a blue whale sounds and surfaces, cosmic ladle scooping the icy depths, an artery so wide I could swim through into its 1,000-pound heart.
Mm. Oh, that's gorgeous. That puts me in mind of Brian Doyle essay about a whale's heart. And I think there is some cosmic connection here, Ellen. Maybe because I've been hanging out in your classes all summer and fall, but for some reason I had this quote handy. From Rachel Carlson, who helped begin the modern conservation movement with Silent Spring. If there is poetry in my book about the sea, it is not because I deliberately put it there, but because no one could write truthfully about the sea and leave out the poetry.
That's beautiful.
Which put me in mind of something John Clare said. I found the poems in the fields and only wrote them down. So here's one here's the relay. And it goes back to the Spring Creek Project again, but this time to Mount St. Helens, because they do Mount St. Helens too sometimes, those Spring Creekers. This is the science of Spirit Lake. It's the water's pulse through line and rod that judders in his hands, in fish after fish whip thrashed into air, into arms and body, and day's heat all day, day after day, all summer, and into the net, where she stands to her waist in the lake's cool sway, and the lake in lit wrinklings letting go as she wades their catch to shore and quickly kneels and lays it flat to her measured board, pinned beneath her sun-lined hands as she bends to sex, clip, and scrape while keeping it alive, gills fluttering like the dream-caught eyes of children, before she turns and splashes back. And each, as she stops to let her arms fall open, hangs there as if unable to let go of her grasp or remember its own truth of unnumbered shadows. When the life from who knows where comes finally shudderingly back and its shiver flits away, a few scales are left to slowly tumble and flash and become like the clear seconds it takes to watch them, indistinguishable from the restless body that holds them.
Gorgeous ending.
Thank you.
Mm.
I want to say something. I had a surprise because I read that poem a couple of months ago, and a scientist friend of mine posted, thank you for writing about female scientists, because it's dedicated to Tara Blackman and her research team at Mount St. Helens. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, like I hadn't even thought, I wasn't even conscious of that. So I think there's hope, because like 30 years ago, I remember playing that game, playing with some friends in graduate school. And we did the thing where you, it's like there's a doctor, it's in an accident with his son, he goes to the hospital, and the only person who can operate on the son is the doctor's father, whatever, something. And like, it turns out it's like his mother. Yeah, obviously. 30 years ago, I was like one of the people in the room, like I was stumped, oh, wow. Who could it be? Oh, yeah, it's, so that's a confession.
I see comments here from Fred Swanson.
Oh,
Oh, Fred, I want to come back to the Andrews and walk with you again. I want to come back, and I really am hoping that can be. I didn't read all of the poems that I wrote at the Andrews. Well, I only wrote 2, but I was only there a week. For me, 2 poems in a week is a crazy large number. A poem can take me a very long time. So it's one of the most inspiring places I've really ever been, ever, maybe the most. But going on, this relay thing, I'm really enjoying. And I want to take just a second to thank you, Derek, for mentioning the classes that I've been giving. I've been teaching in the summer and this winter these series of craft talks, and Derek's been there, and it's been an exhilarating experience for me teaching it. And if you're interested in them, I'm going to just put my website. I really don't have to put it in because it's just ellenbass.com. But if you're interested, you can go to my website and still listen to the last round of talks that just finished, and I'm going to be doing another round in the spring. It's been a lot of fun.
hold on. Let me get my visual aid.
Oh no, don't be intimidated.
All right. So here's the Bass classes. This is what you come away with. She is incredibly generous with these things, with these classes. And, and then she makes you write notes like that as you try and keep track of her, as you try and keep up with her. It's really incredible. Ellen, I don't know. I think you already had most of the poets in Washington State in your class.
Yeah.
Classes, and well, like I said, it was so cool to see all the people where they were. I mean, it was like we were part of this small city populated by people from around the globe, and your class and the reduction in CO2 emissions are the 2 great blessings of the pandemic.
Oh, thank you, Derek. Thank you. Well, don't be intimidated by Derek's notebooks. I think, there are many teachers who are extremely much more brilliant than me. But what I'm really good at is presenting things that are usable, really, really practical and usable, so that your work can take leaps forward in, I think, in a very doable way. that's how I like to teach, is in a really practical way. I shouldn't say it's how I like to teach. It's the only way I know how to teach, because I'm not a brainiac, and but it's super practical and usable. Does that seem true to you, Derek?
Oh,
No,
yeah.
not the part that I'm not smart. You don't have to speak to that, but that it's just very usable.
Oh, well, the thing is like, you're so conscious and conscientious, and there's no stone left unturned, and so it really did, I think, appeal to people like me who, thanks to Kevin Miller, people like Kevin Miller and Nelson Bentley, I've been um, fiddling around with poems for most of my life now. Um, and so I took so much from it, but there were other people who were just getting into poetry, who clearly, and you addressed all the questions. And and what I loved about it is you said, let's embrace um, uh, uh, being a beginner. You said it better. There was a quote
Oh,
that
it's the Rilke.
it's the Rilke quote. It's the
Yeah,
Rilke. Come on.
it's the Rilke
The
quote.
Rilke.
Um,
John Paul from Brooklyn would love to hear some Rilke.
here's the Rilke quote. If the angel deigns to come, it will be because you have convinced him, not by tears, but by your humble resolve to be always beginning, to be a beginner.
Yeah.
Well, yes, that's that. I read that every day as I walk in and out of my office all the time, because that's the deal. But I have the poem, the poem that you wanted me to read now fits, because this is also in your poem, the fish was coming back to life. And in this poem, an animal is coming back to life too. And it's called Kiss.
Oh, good.
When Lynn saw the lizard floating in her mother-in-law's swimming pool, she jumped in. And when it wasn't breathing, its body limp as a baby drunk on milk, she laid it on her palm and pressed one fingertip to its silky breast with just about the force you need to test the ripeness of a peach, only quicker. A brisk little push with a bit of spring in it. Then she knelt dripping wet in her Doc Martens and camo t-shirt with the neck ripped out, and bent her face to the lizard's face, her big plush lips to the small stiff jaw that she'd pried apart with her opposable thumb, and she blew a tiny puff into the lizard's lungs. The sun glared against the turquoise water. What did it matter if she saved one lizard more or less in the world? But she bestowed the kiss of life again and again, until the lizard's wrinkled lids peeled back, its muscles roused its own first breath, and she set it on the hot cement, where it rested a moment before darting off.
Oh, gosh. I know Simmons Bunton is with us tonight. He's a mutual fan of that poem. Thank you for reading Kiss. My students wrote about it last quarter, and I loved that they all thought that they all see Lynn as a teenage girl. And I don't, because I know Ellen, and I'm like, no, Lynn's an adult woman, and so, but anyway, I thought that
I know a lot of young people see Lynn as a girl, and it's really funny because it just shows the way in which the poem, we say this a lot, but it's really true that the poem begins in the writer, but it ends in the reader, and that a poem doesn't matter unless we can see something of ourselves reflected there. Even if the experience is very, very different, we still see something of our shared humanity. And so the children and who read this ignore completely that it says her mother-in-law's swimming pool. That just, they just go right by that because they just see the girl. And I love that. I think it's wonderful that that we read what we need to read, and we absorb what we need to absorb.
Oh yeah, and that image of the turquoise, the sun glared on the turquoise water. Every time I hear or read that poem, it resonates for me with, in a really beautiful way, with Auden's Musée des Beaux-Arts, and the sun shining on those white legs, disappearing into the green water. Um,
Wow, I've never
and
been compared to Auden before. This has been
well,
going in my
no,
head
I think,
here.
no, that image, it's there. I think the sun shone on the water as it had to or something.
Thank
And
you. Thank you.
yeah, yeah, no, but it's, it's an interesting resonance because, um, of course, there, he dies, and here, lizard being lives. Oh, thanks, Chris. Chris says we need more readings like this.
Oh,
Well, speaking of readings like this, I think would that be the note for us to end on, Ellen?
that's great.
I
Yes,
think,
and
I
we
think
could
it's,
chat a little bit.
we can chat a little bit, because I started, you finished, and I don't want to try to follow Kiss. So if anybody has any questions, or you just want to say something. Ooh, someone made me a doctor for Dr. Sheffield. Oh, wow. Posting the recording on Canvas. Oh yeah, we will get the, Elliott Bay Books is going to post this on YouTube. So you're going to get it there. Oh, thank you, Kurt. So Kurt Caswell has, Ellen, would you mind reading this passage from Barry Lopez,
Oh,
from Kurt Caswell?
I'd be honored. Where is it?
So it just popped into the chat.
Oh, here we are. Oh, yes, from Barry's thank you, Kurt. From Barry's most recent book, Horizon. We should just mention, if you don't know Barry's work, you can anticipate something that really will be, I think you could say, life-changing. And as you read it, you'll see Barry's written a lot of books. The most recent book is Horizon, which is a kind of memoir of many years of his life traveling and being a naturalist. I think his most famous book is Arctic Dreams, and that was the first book of his that I ever read. And I have reread it after a while. It never loses its depth and precision. It's an amazing book, Arctic Dreams. I highly recommend it, as well as all of his other books. So I'm going to read this. Thank you, Kurt, for putting it here. It has long seemed to me that what most of us are looking for is the opportunity to express, without embarrassment or judgment or retaliation, our capacity to love. That means, too, embracing the opportunity to be loved, to ferret out and nurture the reciprocated relationships that unite people, that bring people and their chosen places, both the raw and the built earth, together in one agreement, without coercion or sentimentality. The failure to love or to be loved explains most of the mental pain people endure. The failure to love explains the burden of human loneliness, which each person prays or hopes or works hard to be rid of.
Oh, Kurt, well done. Thank you. That is why the scientists need the poets, the humanities. I don't know, the humanities might be the most important, thing that we're offering now at universities in terms of what we need going forward with this species moment. The numbers don't do it. The data doesn't do it. But that felt relationship, that we can experience for ourselves when we hear Ellen's poem, Kiss, and feel that lizard's heart start up is what's going to do it. If we're going to stop degrading the living planet beyond habitation. If I might, I actually just want to end on one other little note here. Thinking about, there's been a lot of laughter tonight, which I love, and so, but that term, the species moment, really has been living with me recently, and because we're at this place where we see that we're killing the planet and we're killing each other. We're killing people of color with racist systems. And the beautiful thing is we're recognizing that, and we're going to fix that. We're going to change that. That violence comes from the same place when we other each other. And I was so I actually attended an event at Elliott Bay Books a month or two ago and read Scott Russell Sanders' The Way of Imagination. And he makes that connection beautifully here. And I want to, we need to be thinking about, in Robin Wall Kimmerer's terms, what kind of ancestor we want to be. She says even colonists become ancestors. What kind of ancestors are we going to be? And here's something to think about from Scott's book. He writes, the legacy of slavery still haunts our nation in the form of racism, along with the higher incidence of poverty, disease, unemployment, incarceration, and other afflictions among African Americans. In the same way, our prodigal consumption today, especially fossil fuels, will haunt our descendants in the form of reduced biodiversity, depleted soils, diminished forests, polluted waters, and disrupted climate. So we're right now, we know this, so we can make a choice as a species to say, do we want to give our children and our children's children this kind of legacy to deal with that we have inherited in the legacy of slavery, or are we going to do better? I mean, we've got like an 8-year window to stop irrevocable climate collapse.
While we're talking about that, this is a really terrific book that has come out, All We Can Save, Truth, Courage, and Solutions for the Climate Crisis, that are essays by women climate leaders. And I love these editors, Ayanna Johnson and Catherine Wilkinson, for a number of reasons. One is because when they were asked if they felt hopeful, they said, fuck hope. We believe in action and plans and programs and strategies. And I love that. And the other reason is that they were smart enough to include poetry. So along with these essays by scientists and activists and all kinds of climate leaders, journalists, farmers, lawyers, teachers, activists, innovators, designers, they included poets because they know that we need to speak both to our heads and to our hearts and to our spirits. So I highly recommend this. It's an incredible balance of facing head on how dire things are, but with absolutely not moving into despair, because we really can't afford despair. We have to just do things. That's a luxury we can't afford. And it's oh good. I'm glad some of you are reading it. You can either listen to it or you can read it. It's just terrific. And I think that I'm just wanting to promote it as much as I can.
Yeah, that's a beautiful collection. And when you were talking about how they were smart enough to include poems, it made me think of this quotation by Joseph Brodsky. By failing to read or listen to poets, society dooms itself to inferior modes of articulation, those of the politician, the salesman, or the charlatan. In other words, it forfeits its own evolutionary potential. For what distinguishes us from the rest of the animal kingdom is precisely the gift of speech. Poetry is not a form of entertainment, and in a certain sense, not even a form of art, but it is our anthropological genetic goal, our evolutionary linguistic beacon.
Oh gosh, that's really, really wonderful, Derek.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph Brodsky.
Yes, yes, that's great. Well, thank you all for being here and sharing. And thank you, Elliott Bay. Buy books, buy books, buy books from Elliott Bay. Maybe that's really what we should end on, is just a little book buying pitch. You probably know this, but you have to act on it. That first of all, the publishers of poetry, particularly small presses like those that publish Derek and me, can't publish their books unless you buy them. And even then, the price that you pay for a book, for example, from Copper Canyon, only covers half of what it costs to publish that book. They have to do the rest by fundraising. But if you don't buy them, it really doesn't work at all. And so if you care about poetry at all, don't just read poetry online, and educate your friends and colleagues not to just read it online. You have to buy the books. As poets, that's not going to really help us out very much. You could agree or disagree with this, Derek, but the amount that I can make even from a really good selling poetry book is not going to really make a dent. But it's really, really important for the publishers. And it's really important that you buy from Elliott Bay and that you buy from independent bookstores, because if we don't have our bookstores, we don't have our cultural world. And I am not a fan of Amazon and try and use it as little as possible. But if I buy shoes on Amazon, I'm not putting my cultural world in as much jeopardy as if I buy my books on Amazon, because we must have our independent publishers, and they've gone through a hard time. And one thing that you might do, I know some of you have also gone through a hard time, and so you're strapped for money and you can't do it right away. But if you can't, you can get your library to buy the book. I get my library to buy lots of books that I want to read, because I can't buy every single one of them. And that's as good as buying the book yourself, because somebody's buying it. But buy all that you can from Elliott Bay. And if you want to give a gift, I know we've just been through the holiday season, but if you've got birthdays coming up and Valentine's Day and everything else that comes up, poetry as gifts is the best gift for under $20 that you could possibly buy for anyone, because they can't necessarily buy it for themselves. Those of you who know the poetry world know that you can't just randomly pick out a poetry book and think that you're going to like it, or somebody else is. So you have to be the curators for your friends and your family, and introduce them to poetry, through a book that you know that they're going to really like. I have a number of people I know, whenever they buy a book that they really want to read, a poetry book, they buy two, one for themselves and one to give. So that's my little spiel. And I hope that you will astound Elliott Bay with the number of books that you buy tonight.
Thank you for that spiel. I think of it as the commons, right? Like buying from our bookstores is supporting the commons. It's like, do I want to have parks around in my town? Yeah, I want to have parks. So yeah, I'm going to pass that. I'm going to vote for that levy or whatever it is. Do I want to have bookstores? I frequented bookstores so much as a kid that's what I wanted to do when I grew up. I wanted to own a bookstore. And it was the funny thing is it was because I was going in there buying all their Tarzan books and gobbling those up. But I thought that was going to be the greatest job in the world. And Andrew or Ellen, you're having some success here because we have Dean Andrew Hirsch Tudor. My dean is with us tonight. He's in the house. Andrew was on it. He said he's ordering All We Can Save for our college library right now, and it may have been good. That's something that I'm going over with my students tomorrow is the ethics of book buying
Great.
as well. And because I think poets maybe more than, well, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, poets maybe more than other writers understand perhaps the importance. And we have a book for all seasons in Leavenworth, which is a marvelous independent bookstore. And my daughters, I mean, I've got my daughters to agree now for birthday gifts. Most of the time, we just go and we either get a book or we get a gift card from our local bookstore. That works out really well.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll come in at this now. You two having, there were no questions tonight, as you saw, but incredible comments. And the two of you have been eloquent and beautiful with the comments. Ellen, you may not know it. Besides being a bookseller, I'm also a Copper Canyon board member. And you gave the pitch, as we call it. But the case that how poetry publishers don't even support, what they do can't all by itself in the marketplace usually support itself. So that all of this has been great and gracious and appreciated. If we were in the store, I realize a lot of tonight with the marvelous, I mean, unless you had little cartoon bubbles over everyone in the audience's head, you wouldn't have gotten all this chatter in the chat while you're reading. But were we in the room besides your books at the table at the back, we would have been running up and getting these other books, the Scott Sanders and the All That We Can Save and Dear America. We brought them down and had them as part of the room, and Barry's books. And I want to thank I guess Derek and Ellen, as she read from what your friend Kurt sent in about Barry's work. Barry's birthday is the day after tomorrow. He would have been 76 on Wednesday. And it was 40 years ago this month, 1981, January 1981, that Barry came up. And I don't know if you knew this, some of this other, since we have these underground routes of connection going, Barry came up on a Greyhound bus to read at Elm Bay. It was the 5th reading we'd ever had. It was not even the setup we have. It was, in fact, it was just a chance brief thing. We didn't really start the readings till 1984. But it was actually, he was doing it as a little benefit for Copper Canyon, because Sam Hamill, the co-founder and Tree, it was Sam's daughter had an accident and they had no medical insurance. And Barry came up and did a little reading. Copper Canyon published the only poetry Barry ever wrote. It was a 3-page chapbook poem called Desert Reservation that they published in 1980. He read for more than that because it was a 3-page little poem. It didn't take too long, but I think that was a year Winter Count, a book of stories, was to come out, and he read from that. So that was for us and for me in a way, that was an introduction to Barry then, and it was an enduring one all these years since. And Horizon, which was read from, was a book he actually worked on for since Arctic Dreams in '86. It was a 30+ year book in the writing, and in his last years he was quite sick, and it was a miracle he got the book done, and sort of everything that was to make that book happen. But we cherish him, and others mentioned tonight too, like Brian Doyle and Bill Kittredge and others. But Barry's certainly a missed presence here in all kinds of ways. But
well, yeah. On that note, Rick, Kurt knew Barry pretty closely and spent a lot of time with him in the field and talking about writing. And so I've just shared with you the link to terrain.org. You may want to check out, I think within the next week, we'll probably have Kurt's tribute to Barry on terrain.org.
Yeah, good. And as we say goodnight, I also want to thank Karen, my colleague, who got thanked without anyone knowing who was putting in all these links, but there was kudos for that. And she, besides getting us going technically, is a lot of why we're able to do what we do in the day in and day out. So, we divide this thing up because she's better at technical stuff than I am. So that's, but she's been key in this all happening. For everyone, again, thank you. Thank you all who've come from all the places you've come to be here tonight. And thank you both, Ellen and Derek. And we'll hopefully get to meet again soon in person. Ellen, you want to get back up here? And we can't wait for that. And Derek, over the mountains. Well, maybe you can come over and sign some books when we get them in. If you get over through the wet snow.
Yes, over the mountains. We'll do it. It's a date, Rick.
Okay.
By the way, I know many of you have been admiring Rick's vest. He got it in India. So you have to go to India to get a vest that good. The other guy,
Fab India. It's a store that's over there. Yes.
The other fella who has great vests like that is Jim Bodine, who I think was with us tonight.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, no India this year though, or at least not now.
No, not now. Wait till we can fly again.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.